Good morning, good morning, good morning. It's good to be here. So my name is Ruskin Kerslake. For those of you that don't know me, it's good to see so many familiar faces. So I'm a Director of Professional Strategic Services. So that means I work with our customers to help them implement the Conga solutions to enable and execute their business strategies. So I can see many familiar faces here today. So I get to work with companies like Roche. I can see Sven here. Hitachi Energy. I can see Stefan. I can see Loretta from Vasala, so lots of very familiar faces. But this morning, what I'd like to do is share with you a story from Boston Scientific, so a company that's also very close to my heart. So I'm very pleased to be joined on stage here today by, let's go back one, hopefully. Jerk.
Only one way forward, right?
That's absolutely right. And also Diego. So gentlemen, maybe you'd like to introduce yourselves.
Yeah, very quickly on my side, and thank you for having us today. I'm part of Boston Scientific for the last 2 years, and I joined for the revenue management building challenge. And basically, I'm product manager for all the revenue capability at the company, and driving this challenge that has been quite a journey today.
I'm Tjerk Smits, actually with Boston Scientific for 13 years and 20 years in the medtech space. In Boston Scientific, and the current position is within, we have an organization called Customer Engagement and Commercial Excellence, and then within that responsible for the processes and programs, data analytics and reporting.
Very good.
And,
Good. Maybe you'd like to give us a bit of a highlight of an overview of Boston Scientific.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Ruskin. I think we also heard it this morning, actually. Every company has a clear vision and a mission. And within Boston Scientific, that is basically advancing science for life, right? Also part of our name. And within that clear vision or purpose is that we have a mission in basically, developing and delivering innovative medical solutions to transform patients' lives around the world. And so that is, have a fantastic portfolio of products, basically to, help all of us and everybody around the world live longer, healthier, better lives, basically.
One of those companies that we probably all interact with, but we don't realize we are interacting with, right?
Yeah. And then, a couple of high points on Boston Scientific, next to clearly the purpose, is that, we have treated like over 40 million patients over the space. We're active in over 120 countries around the world as a global company, and over 50,000 employees, of which we now have in EMEA people on the Conga platform. Right?
Significant. Fantastic.
So that's a short introduction to Boston Scientific and what we do.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So I guess we go back to, if this changes, we do, so there's a little bit of a lag. By the way, I was told we're overrunning by 20 minutes, so as normal with the professional services, I've been asked to trim it by about 20%. So let's see how we get on. So look, Diego, if we go back to May 24, which is when you and I first met at Conga Connect in Dallas, we met at a dinner, and you mentioned that the Boston, obviously an existing customer of Conga that are utilizing CPQ in North America and LATAM as well. But you guys were starting a project to evaluate, and you were looking at a number of CPQ systems because you had the autonomy to do so. And you mentioned that I needed to come and meet with Jerk, who was from the business perspective, the main business stakeholder. And we had a long, in-depth conversation, and that's really where that started kicking off that relationship of how can we help each other here? And actually, is there something that's quite unique? And we'll dive into that a little bit in a second. But what makes Europe slightly different from what we're doing in North America? And those nuances, we need to take those into consideration. So one of those was, I suppose, let's start, Jerk, with what was driving the change at BSI from a business perspective?
Yeah, as we all know, and we have also heard it before, the markets are getting complexer every year. Right, so if we look at the market space where we're operating in, is that you have group purchasing organizations, you have tenders, there is even organizations now going across countries. So more and more competitive and more complex. Different deals, discounts, rebates, right? That was one of the key elements. Yeah, and for that purpose is that it was very clear that a legacy system, which was like delivered as a customized single solution 10 years ago, simply was not going to make it anymore. And the journey started actually, for Boston Scientific in EMEA already like 10 years ago. So we were actually introducing at that moment Salesforce, where Salesforce with account plans, opportunities for the people in the room who are familiar with Salesforce. But then sort of there was a gap, right? Because the whole purpose, I know digital transformation is a word or a term which is misused, but I mean, the true intent was that like our platform would really have a seamless, intuitive, end-to-end support of our revenue management system from really the start to the finish in signing the contract. So that was definitely the missing piece, and then really when we introduced now CPQ this year in the first handful of countries is really the pinnacle of what I would call the digital transformation. At the same time, it's not yet the end, right? Even while, from my perspective, it's really the highlight of the transformation. There is more to come because again, customers are getting more and more complex. So we're also looking at solutions like customer affiliation management, Conga CLM, and especially what the business is asking for. And we are, basically are now making already a first step is also execution monitoring, right? Okay, it's very great. We have a contract with the customer, but where are we? How are we doing? So then with all the data we now have on the platform, we can already make a next step on execution monitoring, which is really from sales and leadership what they're looking for.
Fantastic. And I remember when we had the stakeholder, the BSC stakeholder workshops in Milan in June, when you had that collection of people, stakeholders from across the business, so from IT, from the end user community, from the delivery community, from finance, from operations, a really, really well represented community there, I thought. And it was interesting to see some of the ideas that people had from an end user perspective. How do you see that transformation impacting the day-to-day lives of those users?
Yeah. No, I think in a very positive sense. And I do recognize that what we have launched now today is really what I would call CPQ version 1.0, really with the functionality to replace the legacy homegrown custom solution. And we did that in a way that, especially also Diego, we worked really with a good representation across EMEA of what we call champions or subject matter experts, and then especially across all the countries, but then clearly we made sure that the countries which were launching first were well represented. So we have clearly the sales rep or the account manager, as we call it, the key account managers, regional sales managers. So we really made sure that we have a very good reflection of all our divisions, all our functions. I didn't mention quotes and tenders, for example, also a key partner in this process, where we really cross-divisional and cross-functional. We have a lot of capital equipment to the hospitals, so they were involved as well. Yeah, and I think, through this project that worked out really well. And I think always the best proof is that, once we went live, there were basically no complaints, right? So it has been,
well, even
it has been basically been a seamless experience. And then, with our hundreds of users now, basically together with sales and quotes and tenders, basically using CPQ.
And demanding more functionality, right? And demanding more functionality in a positive way, right?
Yeah.
There's an appetite there for that.
Yeah, so really intuitive. So I think it's a compliment that it's really an intuitive and seamless solution now to basically get sales do their job more efficiently and effectively.
That's awesome. So Diego, when we first met, back at that dinner, you were very cagey. You told me that you had the autonomy to look at other solutions and don't get comfortable just because we're using you in North America. There's a poker face going on there.
That's true.
You really did. You had those options on the table. Ultimately, what made you guys decide to go with the Conga Advantage platform for CPQ?
No, yeah, I mean, we have a history at Boston with Conga for many years. US, Latin America has been working with CLM, CPQ, but we wanted to do our own assessment. We assessed, I don't know, around 4 or 5 other options. Of course, we had already the connection with the US and all the background, but there were, I think, 2 main drivers for our decision. One, and you know, we chat so much about this, about rebates. Mm-hmm. Rebates represent more than 50%, way more than 50% of our revenue is linked to a revenue program. So that was a critical functionality. It was no negotiable. And from the very first moment, what we saw from Conga team was commitment. Commitment from the leadership team, commitment from the PS team, working together with the product team that needed to deliver that functionality. Also, that was one of the complexities. But put that in the roadmap and seeing the level of commitment that you guys had with the rebates, that was for us a critical functionality. That was definitely one of the drivers. And if I need to mention one more, is we have Latin America, we have US running on Salesforce platform. But back then, May 24, we saw in Dallas the new platform, and we saw that Conga was so committed to that. The roadmap was so clear. And actually for us, when we've seen the performance of the platform, where we've seen all the capabilities that could potentially come in into the future, was a bit blurry back then, but now it's way more clear. We said, actually, we like this challenge to take this opportunity to go first to the platform, starting a white canvas and start from scratch there. We saw that opportunity. We knew that was a risk back then, but our leadership team was saying, okay, this is the right direction. Even though it's risky, let's take the right move, right? So I would say those were the 2 fundamental drivers.
So my poker face from memory was when you said, we need to be live by June 25. That can't be compromised. That's a deadline. That happens. No negotiation. Okay, that's challenging, but we can probably do that. And we need you to create a rebates product from scratch for June 25. I was like, okay, because we didn't have rebates. So this was part of what we call co-innovation, where the Boston Scientific team worked with the Conga product engineering team to really bring this together and deliver it. But with that, and you mentioned it there, and let's be honest about these projects have risk associated with them. And I think one of the things that was very refreshing about this process that we ran was how transparent it was. And I remember spending a couple of days with our team saying, all right, guys, we're going to roll this out on a new platform. North America and BSI are probably a little bit hesitant around this, maybe a little bit skeptical about this. Let's look at what could go wrong here. And let's plot every single thing, and this is not a normal thing to do in a sales cycle, but what things do we think could actually go wrong here? And then let's have a mitigation plan for each and every one of them. Because we may not hit that bump in the road, right? Our role from professional services and a vendor perspective is to help you navigate that journey, navigate that road, and get you around those potholes. But you know we're going to hit one of them at some point, right? And it's how we get you out of that pothole, right? And we did hit one. We hit it in January. So that transparent process, you know, how do you think that impacted the leadership's decision and their confidence in moving forward with the platform?
No, yeah, actually, it was not all roses in the road, of course. And we could expect that. So back in January, so we started kickoff development back in December last year. In January, we realized that, guys, if we don't do something right now, this is not going to fly. And I think something that we did at the moment was to be super transparent and open with all the leadership. So we put together Conga leadership. We had literally weekly follow-ups, and you remember this, weekly follow-ups with Boston leadership, Conga leadership team, professional services, product, Boston product team, and we sit together and say, okay, guys, we have this problem, these are the risks, this is the plan. I think we, instead of pointing fingers, was very transparent. We were together very well, and that I think one of the learnings is how well our team internally at Boston and professional services partner together, and we offer a very strong execution plan to overcome those risks very early in the process. So I think the fact that very early we said, guys, we have a problem, and these are the solutions that we are proposing, that gave the confidence to the leadership team that, okay, these guys can face some issues, but they are going to work together to fix them, right? I think that was a key.
I think so as well. And I think that collaboration between our teams at every level, I think was part of the reason that we were able to meet that quite aggressive go-live time. And how do you feel that made a difference during that implementation, Jörg, that collaboration, that relationship?
Yeah, that's a good point. And one thing on the previous point, I don't know whether it's a formal Conga statement, but I mean, when Ruskan introduced the platform, I mean, everybody here knows that like the human mind starts to wander after like 10 seconds, and with today's social media, you know, it's probably even more than 2 seconds. So when Ruskan mentioned that the platform would be faster than the Salesforce, I don't know whether it's an official one, but then I was sold, right? And all the problems were for Diego to solve then, right? I mean, yeah, so no, from a project, I think it went extremely well, right? Because then clearly we had the requirements, which was a long internal discussion, where I was always really insisting on, let's go with out of the box. You know, we better change the way the process works, because I'm assuming that like Conga CPQ is the result of, you know, hundreds of thousands of users, thousands of companies, or hundreds of companies, so that's the best in class. So we better use it as is the best practice than what we start to tailor it to like, or customize it to like historic grown needs. So I think that was a crucial one. And then, yeah, to have a great development team, to have the champions network, and yeah, in the end also an excellent training program with all the materials delivered to train the end users. I think all these different steps to work together, what do we need on the timelines, you know, the requirements, the development, that was, and then working with our whole end user group, so both with the champions, the subject matter experts, like I mentioned, I think that was critical, and a great collaboration, as Diego already said, between Boston Scientific and Conga to make it happen, because yeah, this June was really a hard deadline.
For me, one of the big differences and the big success criteria here, guys, and without wanting to be obsequious, but I think you need kudos for this, was I remember when we sat down and we talked about the fact that we've got to avoid taking a shopping list of requirements, because this platform's open and we can customize this to its heart's content. So I'm going to need you to be quite strict with the users, like you were, in a very positive way of saying, no, we're going to change the process so we can use out-of-the-box functionality versus customizing the solution to our heart's content so it looks like the way that you want it to be today. You know, that was key, and that really allowed us to manage those deliverables. Looking back, I guess from both of you, what outcomes have you seen so far from the program that kind of spring to mind?
So we are actually quite happy with the outcomes so far. So what we did is so we have a very important milestone this year at the company. We migrated to S4. So it was that is why
that was the June. Yeah.
That is why we did the migration in August. That is why we had only until June to go live with CPQ. If not, our project was going to be delayed until 2026. So our go-to-market strategy was, okay, let's tackle 5 countries that represents all our market specificities in EMEA. But with a very like regional and cross-divisional mindset. And then let's try to learn from those countries. During 25, let's learn, adjust the product and roll out, right? And so next year we need to roll out to a full organization, almost 40 countries, right? So it's a big one, right? But we are in a very good position. So today we are seeing, first of all, we are happy because we are seeing the adoption is great. And the learning curve, Jörg was mentioning this, how fast people was adopting the tool. And we are happy for that. Actually, Payne today is here today as well, the director of quote and tenders for the EMEA organization, and he was telling me, I'm not hearing complaints. Why is that? I mean, did you do anything? I mean, we are not expecting congratulations, that's fine, but from users, but at least no complaints is good. So we have seen, like, literally in the first days, users fulfilling very complex end-to-end processes. And so we are happy. Today, what happens is that the upcoming countries are asking us to come first in the pipeline. And they're saying, we want to go next because we are seeing how fast this is and how easy, which is a lot of work. We have a very strong execution team on change management, training, communication. That is a big part of the job. But I think so far the outcomes are great. Yeah.
Yeah, really nothing to add to this one. Yeah, I think it is a great experience, and the users have accepted it, and they're using it, and it's working, and we're getting the quotes to the customers, the contracts signed up, so working well.
Final question, Chuck. What advice would you give to other businesses in the room that are looking to go through a similar CPQ transformation?
Yeah, I think key is always communication. Everything needs to start with communication, and that's what before we started even this project, and it was also earlier today, the why, right? Why are we doing this? And then clearly, the sales teams, they already see the need in that sense. So with the why and the communication. And the second one is then, to have that champion network. Because we, between like Diego and myself, we cannot foresee all the different scenarios or whatever. So we really needed to have a very solid network. And then, clearly a great project team led by Diego as product owner and project manager, put that whole team together. And see it through from the start to the end. The timeline is here. That was great. So we also didn't have like any snips in the project. So we were really able to power through, and in the great partnership with Conga to get it delivered and to go live. Yeah. Awesome. So communication, good network, and a great project team. That's what I would say are the three key ingredients from Boston.
Pretty simple. I have to say, from my perspective, it's one of the best examples I've seen of true partnership. That transparency that we've had since day one, except for your poker face in Dallas. I think has been really key, and just the fact. But I would also like to say the fact that the point that you just made about no complaints since we've gone live with this time, like that in itself, I think, guys, deserves a round of applause. Going live in this time frame, and everyone happy. So look.
Thank you.
Like the project, we've delivered this part of the presentation on time. So I'm going to hand back now. And are we going to a break now? Are we going to lunch? Steve is back.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for the invite.